Question. How do you ever fully trust people again? I can see narcissistic traits like neon signs, but that doesn't make everyone a narcissist. But my brain screams, oh, warning in capital letters with exclamation marks. And I just never get close to people anymore. It makes me sad because I was so into humans before. I just loved them. Well, let's start with the absolute basics. Let's start with our emotional hygiene first. So, the emotional hygiene front. If your brain is screaming at you, that to me indicates that you're experiencing fairly strong emotional dysregulation. And it's probably better that you don't experience that. I think we would agree. So, what I recommend you do is spend some time trying to diminish your emotional flashbacks. If you go to the YouTube channel I have, there's a YouTube channel, dedicated YouTube channel called Fortress Mental Health Protection, and it has a complete course. It's totally for free. You don't have to give your email or anything for it. You can just go and get it, and it will teach you how to become more emotionally literate. It's a very, very simple, very, very straightforward course for teaching you how to do that. And it will teach you how to slow down the intensity and the frequency of the emotional flashbacks that you're cycling through. After very traumatic events and after very traumatic relationships, we can expect to become emotionally dysregulated with, difficult, painful, shocking scenarios that we've survived. We can expect afterwards to become hypervigilant. I wouldn't want anybody to live in a scenario where their brain is screaming, warning at them. Which leads us into the second part of my answer to you. This means that you don't feel safe. And let's philosophically consider the possibility outside of typical psychological ideology that if you don't feel safe, that might not be a neurotic response. If you don't feel safe, you might not be wrong. You might be right. So if I give you some psychological solution that then, oh, I feel safe again, I'm just going to act like I'm safe when you're not, that would be irresponsible. So why would you potentially not feel safe? Because maybe your body and your brain is right. Maybe it's doing its job properly and it's telling you you aren't in a psychological and an emotional space just yet to really know whether you can fully assess people accurately or not. Why? Couple of reasons. One, when you're in a narcissistically abusive relationship, you become colonized. Your mind, your body, your brain become hijacked, they become colonized. Parts of your brain, parts of your mental functioning actually get targeted and weakened deliberately. One of those areas is your capacity to distinguish reality from delusion. It suits the narcissist's purpose for you to not be able to tell the difference between reality and delusion. This, my friends, my comrades, tovarishi, is what gaslighting is. Gaslighting, as it's being used online, has been misused and has come to mean lying. Gaslighting is not lying. It comes from a film. Well, there's two films that were filmed within 4 years of each other for some strange reason, called Gaslight. And the evil husband in this film is turning the gas lamps on and up and down in intensity in the house and telling his wife he isn't to slowly boil her in slowly heated water into thinking that she can't tell reality from delusion. So she assumes that she's going crazy. Why would he do that? To weaken her trust and her faith in her ability to discern reality from fantasy. I'm using fantasy here. I'm using it in the more psychological, psychoanalytic sense. Let's change it. Let's not say fantasy because people think, oh, it's good, sexual fantasy or fantasy about the future. No, no, delusion, delusion. You now can't tell the difference between reality and delusion. You can't distinguish. Your capacity to distinguish is now damaged. So you're saying to me, imagine you're my client and you come in and you say, how do I ever trust people again? I see the signs of narcissism and my brain screams warning for everyone. I would be looking at you and I'd be saying, okay, there's some work to be done here. There's some real work to be done here. I don't want to frighten anybody or make them feel overwhelmed. But if you actually have been in a relationship with somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, the damage that it does is pretty extensive, and it's not fixable by cosmetic methodologies. It's not fixable with superficial modalities. You can't breath work this away. You can't yoga it away. I love breath work. I love yoga. I love martial arts. I love meditation. None of that's going to move it. I like chanting sometimes. Yes. Hindu chants, enjoyable. It's not going to help. It's not going to help. Most modalities won't help. The weapons and the tools they bring to the problem are too blunt. You need somebody who specializes in what the problem of narcissistic abuse is. It is a colonization. It is a brainwashing. And even when you terminate the relationship, that part of your mind is still colonized. That part of your brain is still not functioning properly. So we have to get you back to a space where you can distinguish reality from delusion, where you can distinguish what is real and what is true from what is false. And it takes time. The other part of that is the narcissist has already deliberately damaged, has also deliberately damaged our capacity to tell right from wrong. They invert and pervert morality quite deliberately. Why? Why would they do that? Why would I want you to have an inverted, corrupted, perverted sense of right and wrong? So that I can abuse you and tell you it's love. So that I can use you, exploit you, dominate you, and tell you this is what love is. I must slow drip over time convince you that up is down, the in is out, the black is white, the good is bad and bad is good. Whatever your core values are, if it goes on for long enough, the relationship, if they are of a psychopathic mindset, they will deliberately find out what your values are, what your loves are, what your key morality is, and seek to subvert it. And they'll get not narcissistic supply, but let's just say sadistic pleasure or psychopathic supply, I guess, from doing that, from having the power to make you love that which is bad and hate that which is good. And in that sense, it's truly demonic. It's truly satanic, what is being done. So what do we need to do? We need to decolonize. We need to decolonize. We need to undo the brainwashing that's been done. And this takes time. I have a course for doing that. It's called Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse. If you find a therapist who's open-minded and will go through the course with you, I can stick them on the course with you at no extra cost. Or you'll need to find a therapist who really understands the architecture of a narcissistically abusive relationship. What I have observed in myself and what I observed in other people is post-narcissistic abuse. The real tragedy is people tend to self-isolate. They end up with this kind of a pretty bog standard PTSD after effect, like a post-traumatic embitterment syndrome, where they start to see all people as potential conduits of evil because the last person they were with, somebody that they loved, that they got completely wrong, hurt them so egregiously. So of course they're going to be suspicious that all people are going to do that. Now, this really takes time. As I say, it's not cosmetic work. With the course I have, it's very direct. It's challenging. You would already need to be pretty well versed in your emotional regulation work because it's very, very triggering, the course itself. I hate that term, but it is. And, 3 to 4 months of pretty committed, pretty consistent action, and you will be able to get yourself back on the path to start trusting yourself again so that you can trust other people. Everyone pray for a good internet connection. Remember that what you've been through deliberately and explicitly was attacking your sense of what is real and what is right. So we have a lot of work to do. I tell people things here, and I've been saying stuff like this for years that people don't want to hear. There's two major things that I'll always say to people that they don't want to listen to. When I tell them to do the stop emotional flashback technique, and 5 times a day they have to tap 5 fingers and say things to themselves 5 times, usually that's fine. They don't mind doing that. But there's 2 things that they really don't want to do, that they really need to do in order to recover from narcissistic abuse. One is develop their emotional literacy. So your emotions are probably frozen. And you'll think, my emotions aren't frozen. I'm feeling every day. Yeah, anxiety, fear, resentment, but that's constipation. You're not feeling the full palette of your emotions. Your emotions are not flowing. When we are undergoing emotional abuse, in order to survive it, we detach from our emotions because they're a source of pain. So if all the pain and all the torture is coming from emotions, you'll just switch off. You'll say, I don't want to know what my emotions are. So the only emotions, the very few emotions that are coming through are emergency emotions: rage, resentment, fear, anxiety, and so on. So you have to develop your emotional literacy. It doesn't take that long. It's like 20 minutes a day. It's probably take about 60 days or so, but you will become more emotionally literate. The second thing that people need to do, but they really don't like hearing it and it puts them off, as I say, we have to have a conversation about your moral philosophy. Oh, it sounds so boring. It's like 16th century, long-winded European philosophy. No, it's not. It's really simple. It's very modern. It's very today. And you do have a moral philosophy. You use it every day. You're asking yourself every day on an unconscious level, whether you like it or not, what is good? What is bad? How should I live? How should a person live in this world? What is good? What should I move towards? What is bad? What should I stay away from? How should a person live? How should I live? That's your morality. That's your moral philosophy. You're using it. What is the nature of this reality? And you might think, wow, really? To overcome narcissistic abuse, I got to get into the nature of reality? Yes. Why? Because in order to trust yourself again and trust other human beings again, your whole map of reality has to, you need the neuroplasticity for the map of reality to absorb what's happened. And right now, if your emotions are frozen and you're frozen and you're in post-traumatic shock, you won't be able to do that. But if you don't do that, how are you going to move on? Remember, something shocking happened. As human entities, we have to take that and digest it and absorb it. It wasn't in your map of reality before. It wasn't. Because if it was in your map of reality before, that people like this existed and that this could take place, you would be able to adopt a stance towards that and avoid it. And if you fail to avoid it when you're in it, you'd go, oh no, I know what this is because it's part of my map of reality. So much of our denial and so much of our justification of our narcissistic partner's bad behavior is because we're off the map. So develop emotional literacy, develop your moral philosophy, so that the big final boss that we have to overcome in terms of our healing journey, so that you can move on, is to finally accept that this thing happened, and not just accept it, but adapt your map of reality to accommodate this horrible event. So then you're going to have to ask yourself, like, why does evil exist? Why do people do bad things? Why would somebody use somebody's love to leverage them into doing things that they didn't want to do? These are big questions. These are hard questions, but you get used to it. It's kind of fun. And I don't need you to have answers, by the way. Nobody needs you to have answers. Don't get confused. I'm not suggesting you create like your own moral philosophy that you then dogmatically apply. I want you to become stronger. I want you to put in the reps and become stronger so that you have the capacity to answer these kinds of questions. Sure, sitting around chatting about just gossip and the weather and daily events in sport is fine. I'm not a snob. Like, all contact, like friendly, good-natured, good faith contact is fine. There's no such thing as petty conversations as far as I'm concerned. I get people asking me like, "Oh, I don't even want to sit and talk about the weather. I want to talk about the Matrix and escaping the Matrix." And I'm like, dude, just chill out. We're not really talking about the weather. We're not really talking about sport. We're saying, "Hi, I see you. Hi, I see you." It's a touch, and that's fine, and that's good, and we need that. What I've seen is that people will self-isolate, as I said before. So this work has to be done so that we can really heal, so that we can really move on, and so that this doesn't happen again. In hopes that in the future, you'll never need to do this to yourself again. You'll never need to go through this kind of scenario again to trigger whatever karmic enlightenment moment you were trying to trigger in yourself. Just do it once. Don't be like me. Don't spend 15 years in, doing it 3 times. What a waste. Those were good years. 30 to 45. Whoa, they were good years. My knees were good. They weren't. My knees were crap, but they're good years. You know what I'm saying? Question number 2 that got top voted. This is a democracy, comrades. How does the survivor of narcissistic abuse deal with the self-anger for having gotten in and participated in such a god-awful relationship? I really like this question, and I formulated what I believe is what I narcissistically believe is a clever answer. It uses a kind of like a philosophical rhetorical device called sophistry, and I'll give you I'll give you the clever answer, and you can see through my tricks, my psychological mind games. Observe. Client comes to me and says, "I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse. How do I, Richard, deal with the self-anger I have for having gotten and participated in such a god-awful relationship?" So I said this to my mate, and I held on to it because I was like, "This is clever. I'm going to use this again and impress people with my big brain." Who are you to not forgive yourself for making a mistake? Are you so special that you can never make a mistake? That sounds like narcissism to me. If I fell in love with a woman and loved her with all my heart, and she lied and chose to leverage my love in order to abuse me, in order to exploit me, would you insist that I hate myself for the end of time? What are you, Catholic? Why would you do that? What kind of a friend are you? So I do this with people face to face. Like, I do it with a smile on my face. But I'm like, "What kind of a friend are you?" Joking, like laughing. But I do it serious like that. "What kind of a friend are you?" And they laugh. I go, "Ah, so you wouldn't do that to me. So you wouldn't be such a horrible person as to insist that I hate myself for loving someone. But you think you're special. You're so special that you get to hate yourself. How about you're just a normal person? How about, like everybody else, you just make mistakes? How about, like everybody else, you're learning and doing the best you can with what you know at any given moment in time? You tell me. You said it's a god-awful relationship. And what's so god-awful about loving someone? And what's so god-awful about taking a risk? What's so god-awful about that? Should we be wiser? Yes. Should we be more emotionally mature? Probably. Should we be more responsible? Yeah, that's fine. But the idea that you're going to sit in a corner, like flagellating yourself until you go blind with your self-indulgent, stiff-nippled, guilt-ridden, masochistic lust, it's pure self-indulgence. I said this to my friend, and it made him laugh. So I was like, "Oh, I'll use this on people in future." This is my sophistry at work. In neurolinguistic programming, these are called pattern interrupts. So you change the frame. It's almost like comedy. That's why if you think it's funny, it's the same infrastructure as comedy. So the client comes from one frame of reality, and I take it and I pretend that I didn't understand what they meant. And then I clash the two frames together. So usually when we laugh, like describing the psychology of comedy is not funny at all. But humor, laughter, is when two frames of reality are banging together. And for some reason, because God is weird and has a sense of humor, he makes us go, I don't know. I don't know. Ask him. I don't know why he did that, but that's what we do. So if it's funny, it's because we're banging two frames of reference together. And I'm banging two frames of reference together to create like a new perspective, which is also what comedy does. It creates like a third perspective. Um, you could say it's adjacent to the Hegelian dialectic. It's a synthesis, if you like. And it produces relief. It produces a release where you go, oh yeah, I never thought of it like that. So we're also using perception switching, because so you say it from your point of view and you're like, oh, this is such a it's a god awful, god damned relationship. And I'm so angry that I got into this and participate. Oh, you know, you're beating yourself away, beating off, beating, you're beating yourself. You're not beating off, you're beating yourself. You're beating yourself in front of the rest of us, and we want you to stop because it's not helping, and you'll go blind. So, so you don't have the right to do that. You don't have the right to do that. It's not acceptable. If you said God awful, so you brought God into it. You're not special. You're not different. You're not Christ, unless you're claiming you are. In which case, God help you. Because your trials haven't even begun. A shitty relationship was a pleasant afternoon. So you're not, right? So you're a person and I'm a person. Now, if you're going to judge me as my friend by the standard of Richard, you probably should forgive yourself for that. You didn't really do anything wrong. Then why is it different for you? Even if you say because I'm uniquely bad, that's still narcissism, isn't it? So I plug narcissism back in to the sophistry, into the rhetoric. It's still you're still being a narcissist, aren't you? Because you're saying you're special. You're not saying you're especially good, you're saying you're especially bad and that you deserve eternal punishment. What nonsense. What nonsense. Stop this immediately. We all make mistakes. Loving somebody is if to love somebody non-carefully is unwise, but it's not. It's not like evil. It's not evil. If they choose to exploit and abuse that love, that's evil. If you continue to beat yourself up internally the way they were beating you psychologically, I wouldn't say it's evil, but I'd say it's dumb. It's a waste of time. You have stuff to do. The rest of the world needs you to contribute. Like, just give it up. Forgive yourself. Not big on forgiving. I don't talk forgiveness much, but you must forgive yourself. And just be a person. Just say, I'm going to judge myself by the same standards I would judge anybody else. And that's it. And move on. And move on. Forgiveness, when we're talking forgiveness, if it's the forgiveness of acceptance, that's the thing that I'm into, is acceptance. Whether you forgive the person or not, I don't know. I don't insist on it. I don't think it's necessary. You forgiving yourself is necessary, because if you don't, the toxic shame and the guilt that builds up is really debilitating. And it won't just slow your progress in your healing. It will paralyze it completely. You won't heal. You won't make any progress. You'll keep going to therapy and you'll go nowhere because you're judging yourself far too harshly. So that's how you do it. Now I gave you that trick. You also can trick people, ha ha ha, into not hating themselves. Welcome to Richard's mind control circle. Another question that I want to address, I think it was asked me on Instagram, and then I'll go back to the highly ranked questions here. Is I looked for it just before, and I don't know if the person who asked me it deleted it. Maybe they thought better of it and deleted it, but I really like the question. It was, if narcissism is CPTSD and CPTSD can be cured, why can't the same cure for CPTSD heal that person's narcissistic personality disorder? And then someone somewhere else said, I think on my Telegram group, if it's about, if narcissistic personality disorder is because of something that the parents didn't give the child, why can't we give the narcissist that now, and then they'll be healed? These are perfectly reasonable questions. These are perfectly reasonable questions for the layperson. I hope no psychologists, psychotherapists, or counselors watching this would make that mistake. I'll answer both questions in a rough way first, like this. The damage is already done. Now I'll answer it in a slightly more psychologically literate way. What we're dealing with here is time. It's time. How can anybody fulfill the needs of a child? You have a 45-year-old man in front of you. My parents failed me in some way. Okay. And you've identified that. Okay. And now we're going to use psychology to fix that. How? How? It's like I'm missing a foot or something. I didn't have good enough parents. Well, we're going to do it in therapy. How would that, what does that look like? What the hell does that look like? You're going to make up for the fact that I wasn't raised by good enough parents, by abusive or neglectful parents. Let's say that that's what I had. And you're going to do it with therapy? What magical therapy is this? That's not the therapy of this dimension, I tell you. That must be the therapy of the dimension where the elves live or something. Whatever the elves did with Frodo at the end of the trilogy, where they're like, he's coming to the Western lands. I was like, what kind of a spa do you have over there? How it's like this guy's soul got burned. You go, yes, we have a spa for that. So I want to go there. I want to go to burnt soul spa. No, we don't have anything for that. Therapy can be amazing, and therapy can be a total waste of time. Therapy, talk therapy, is just two adults in a room talking to each other. How much truth you bring, how much vulnerability you bring, how much courage you bring, I'm afraid that's on you. Like, as a client, the therapist can't make you do these things. They can only guide you towards it. No, folks, like, I'm sorry to tell you, but like for a lot of things, the damage is done. The damage is done. Now, if you had a bad childhood or something happened to you that was awful, I'm not saying give up hope. I'm not saying you can't make your life better, but there is nothing on earth that makes up for the fact that your parents didn't take care of you in a way that was ideal. Nothing. There's nothing that does that. We can live with it. We can do better. We can, learn to parent ourselves and so on and so forth. But no. That's hard drive stuff. That's in the hard drive. The narcissist didn't get what they needed, and a part of them died. Now, let's just do a quick recap, because I say this to people and I'm like, oh my God, I've been saying this since 2014. People must be bored out of their brains hearing me say this. No. Solipsistically, I'm bored out of my brains saying it. So I assume everybody is and that everybody's heard it, because I've said it to myself 2,000 times. I think I've said it to everybody 2,000 times. Let's just remember this. The narcissistic personality disorder is, broadly speaking, created in a dynamic of polar opposites, of two polarities that pull the child's psyche apart. They're both delusional polarities. One is saying, you are amazing, you are wonderful, you are angelic, you cannot do wrong for doing bad. The other one is saying, you are the worst of the worst of the worst. You are demonic, you're satanic, you cannot do good for doing bad. You cannot do good for doing bad. You're always bad, no matter what you do. And so the child is trapped between these two polarities, and the psyche splits. And what you have with narcissistic personality disorder is really a polarity. It's kind of a, don't get confused, but it is technically a bipolar state, as in bi, two, and polarity state, but of the personality, They're constantly running from the pole that says you're awful and you're terrible, and running towards the pole of adulation and wonder and admiration and fear and respect and applause. None of this is love. The narcissistic personality disordered individual never knew authentic love when they needed to. They knew something approximating it, adjacent to it, adulation, admiration, you know, objectification, and occasionally, unfortunately, physical abuse objectifies the child as a bad object. And then there is sexual abuse, which objectifies the child as a worthless object, but also an object of desire and lust, of adult lust. So there's all this going on. The narcissist, in their formation, in order to survive this torture of being pulled, this insanity-inducing scenario, all they want is love, authentic love, but there's none there. They're either going to get the message that they're awful, or they're going to get the message that they're the best of the best of the best. So which one do they attach to? This one, and they spend the rest of their lives hiding from this one. It used to be thought that in grandiose classic narcissism, there was no sense of self-loathing. There was no sense of myself as a bad object. We now know that that is wrong. All narcissistic personality disorder is compensatory. They're constantly running from the bad voice, and they're running towards the quote unquote good voice, thinking that narcissistic supply is love. That's what they're trying to do. They're a junkie. They're thirsting for love, but they can't take love now because they're broken. Like, it's too late. It's too late. Why? Something else that you must understand in order to understand when you're dealing with these questions that are good questions, they're naive questions that relate to the narcissist in therapy and the narcissist healing. In order to survive this scenario, the child builds a shell around themselves. The shell keeps reality out. Reality, data, and facts and truth are the enemy. Some data gets through the shell, but only that which validates the pre-existing self-image. Any other data that comes through that can be transformed on its way through the shell to validate the pre-existing false self-image will be, and all the rest is ignored. That's why you've had the experience of arguing with a narcissist and finding them to be very, very stubborn, very, very stiff, and nothing gets through to them. They just cling stubbornly to that delusional version of themselves. So we say this person is a narcissist. Okay, you're saying they're a narcissist. I didn't say it. I've never met them. But if they're displaying 6 or more of the 9 traits of narcissism as defined by the DSM to a pretty high level, and you say they have narcissistic personality disorder, I don't argue with you. I say, okay, then you can abandon all hope that therapy is going to touch them, because the formation of their personality is one giant no. The formation of their personality is one giant no. It's a negation. They must fight like hell to keep reality at bay. And they've been doing this since they were very, very young. They don't know any other way of existing. Inside that shell, their authentic selves, their real emotions, and even their ego died, as it will do. It didn't receive any attention. It didn't receive any love. All of the love or potential love was changed and deflected onto the false self. They don't want love. They can't accept love. It's meaningless to them. They want worship. of the deity, of the fetish, of the, imagine some like weird horror movie cult that worships like the most weird perverted image of a human, like a Chucky doll or something of a human, and they magically, the narcissist, magically, with what Freud would call libidinous energy from the libido, the life force, imbues the fetish, the false self, with magical power, with love, with lust, with psychic energy, meaning here psychological psychic energy. They just fantasize all day. They're just, it's black magic. Now you come along and you say, I love you. And they go, uh-huh. And I love you. Now love me and I will love you. And what they mean is, now worship the magic fetish like I do. And you pour love into them and you think, this poor soul, their childhood was terrible. They must be a bit weird. Maybe they're a bit autistic. Maybe they're brain damaged. Maybe they have PTSD. Maybe they're whatever. I went through it all. I did all of this. I'll love them better. All that love, all that sacrifice, all that time, the attention, the money was taken and given to the false self. There's no ego in there. You think they're egotistical. You think that they're egotistical, but technically, by psychoanalytic theory, there's no ego. There's a superego. Inside that shell, that person died. They're dead. If it's narcissistic personality disorder, now look, this is YouTube. I'm not a clinician. Where this isn't a lecture in a university. If you misapply and overapply the term narcissist to somebody who you don't like, well, then what I just said isn't true. But that's on you. That's not on me. Like if you're going to use this word, but you can't be bothered to find out what it means and what it doesn't mean, that's on you. That's not on me. But if they are a narcissist and if they have narcissistic personality disorder, there is no chance. Zero. Anybody who touts therapy for narcissistic personality disorder is a charlatan, is a charlatan, knowingly a charlatan. If they really, I mean, why would you tout therapy? Why would you tout therapy for it without understanding it? If you have any understanding of it, anyone who genuinely understands narcissistic personality disorder knows that what I just said is true, 100% true. There is no reaching that person. There is no person to reach. These are our coordinates. We're projecting. We're projecting ourselves onto them. Oh, if I had love, if I was given attention, if in the face of my rage I was shown forgiveness, blah blah blah, da da da, beep beep beep, boo boo boo. It's nonsense. You're in an alien world now. You're dealing with an artificial intelligence, create hive mind, created an alien dimension that has completely different paradigms to the ones that you operate from. No, normal CPTSD work is not going to touch someone with narcissistic personality disorder. Not going to touch. There's no one there. It's not going to touch someone with narcissistic personality disorder because there's no one there. Inside, behind the wall, a frightened child cries, I will save her, I will save him. They're dead. They're dead. You get inside, like in that terrible movie with Jennifer Lopez and Vince D'Onofrio that we all forgot about, but had wild visuals in it where they could get inside of like serial killers' minds. Remember that movie? Where did that go? It was really surreal. The visuals were cool. The movie was terrible. She's like an investigator and she goes inside the mind of a serial killer. So imagine we go inside. Where's the child? Find the child. You beat all the demons and the traps and everything that stops you, and you bravely battle your way through, and you get through the final boss, and you smash through to the inner sanctum of the temple. Let me find the child and live my narcissistic elation moment of embracing the ice. There are some very old dusty bones here. I would suggest this is a corpse that's like 40, 60, 80 years old. Gone. Long gone. Long gone. Gone, gone, gone. So no, the CPTSD work isn't going to touch them. And no, we can't give them what they had in childhood. And it's a good question. I'm not mocking you. It's a perfectly reasonable thing to ask, but it doesn't account for the mechanics, the real architecture of the personality disorder. And apart from anything else, psychology just doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. I like it. I have my criticisms. I have a degree of faith in it. I have a degree of faith in therapy, but it's not boundaryless faith. And there are things that it just can't do. It can't change the past. Psychology doesn't provide us with time machines. I've been saying that since day one of this project. When people laugh at me, they're like, what's time machines got to do with it? It's got everything to do with it. Psychology ideologically operates on a fantasy of time machines, as though if you and I sit in my office, timed for 1 hour, and go back to a memory that you had of being abused, and we work through it together, everything's going to be okay. It's not. It might be better. It might be easier, but it's not going to be the same by any stretch of the imagination as if your parents had done what you needed them to do. And that is a sad fact. But there are many sad facts in life, and I'd rather you deal with an ugly truth than be driven mad by a beautiful lie. The next highly rated, highly ranked, democratically chosen question. Don't you start, laptop. I don't want any more technical issues tonight. The hardest part for me to wrap my head around is if they're doing this stuff consciously or not. My brain keeps ruminating, trying to explain my perspective and get on the same page. You mustn't explain. I guess I keep thinking they're doing this behavior unconsciously and I'm in one of their blind spots. No, they're in your blind spot. There's no there. There's no person for you to reason with. You must abandon sincere communication when you observe that you're talking to somebody who's terminally insincere. You're trying to use truth and reason with somebody who doesn't speak that language at all. They speak power and exploitation. They speak adulation, narcissistic supply, and worship of the deity that they are. That's it. You're either doing your job or you're not. It's pretty simple. And I think we all know that in our hearts, but it's so painful to be faced with that reality. You are either doing your job of worshipping them and facilitating their lives, or you are not. How sad, how lonely. Okay, we can feel sad, we can grieve, you can have a bad afternoon, you'll survive 3 months of grieving, but if you stay and you keep trying to make this work for 10, 15, 20 years, trust me, trust the people watching this who will affirm what I'm saying in the comments is true, and trust my clients, that is hard to live with. Hard. Good years of your life given to somebody else's theatre performance. It's livable with, but it's hard, and we'd all rather you didn't. You're not in their blind spot. They're in yours. But after an entire year of trying hard, I feel my brain is breaking. And I must be overlooking. Oh, naughty laptop. Obey me. And I must be overlooking that there is some intentional effort behind the behavior. Me personally, like not speaking, like it's hard sometimes to sort of be there's a responsibility here. I can't just say the first thing that comes into my head because that would be very irresponsible. I have to try and give people information that's going to help them based on the avatar I hold in my head of who is listening to me. And I know people are traumatized. They can take a joke and everything, but like some people are really, really in pain. So I have to filter everything I say so that it's kind of like understandable and useful. But on this one, let me tell you, like, just as a person, what I think is important for you to understand here. I see people agonizing over the question, Is it conscious or is it not conscious? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. They're not conscious in the way that you're conscious anyway. We change the question and we say something a little simpler. Do they know that they're hurting you? Why does nobody ask the question that way, by the way? Class, why does nobody ask the question that way? They always say, intellectualize, be highfalutin. Are they conscious or not? Is this AI conscious? Is it really thinking? Does it pass the Turing test or not? Here's another more simple question. Do they know that they're hurting the person they're with or not? We don't ask that question. Do you see how clever we are? To avoid the pain and to avoid the grief and to avoid the healing that the pain and the grief and the despair will bring and the escape. We're clever because we don't want to feel that way. Because you know perfectly well that the answer to that question is yes. How do you know perfectly well, class, that the answer to that question is yes? Because you tell them, if not every day, at least a few times a week, what you are doing is hurting me. And do they stop, class? No, they do not. I don't care whether they're conscious or not conscious or operating unconsciously. Who knows how much of our operations are conscious or unconscious? These are metaphysical questions. Do they know they're hurting you? 100% yes. They know that they're hurting you. Do they stop hurting you when they realize that they're hurting you? 100% no. No, they don't stop, do they? That's why you're here. You don't want to hear it because you're holding on to hope, but you know that what I'm saying is true. They know that they're hurting you because you've told them that they're hurting you and they don't stop. And that is what you need to know. The person who claims to love you and they hurt you. Make of that what you will. Oh. Sky Changes says, can you please share the thoughts running through your head in a specific situation from your past? Like when you were devaluing or triangulating one of your victims? That those videos are to illustrate what narcissists do. I don't have narcissistic personality disorder. If I did, I'd be at like 5 million subscribers by now. This one was highly rated. Oh, yeah, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to do two more and then I'll wrap because if I go too long, I get silly and start singing songs. Question. Question. Can you explain how the codependent is narcissistic at the same time? Good question. Codependent is not a clinical term. It's not a recognized clinical entity. It means different things to different authors. I'm not even going to say clinicians, I'm going to say authors. So I just wrote a book called A Cult of One, and I called it Echo Codependency. And I gave my version of what I think echo codependency is. And then I became aware afterwards because people told me of two different types of echoism. I haven't read the books yet. It's on my list of things to do. But they define it as not being codependent. Okay, so codependency is up for grabs. Narcissism isn't. It is a clinical entity. You might not agree with the diagnostic criteria to a nuance. I don't agree with the diagnostic criteria that's given in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual put out by the American Psychiatric Association, but I go with that. So this is kind of like sort of asking a question from personal development, self-help, life coaching, and putting it adjacent to one from absolute medical psychiatry. And it doesn't really work. But I'll try and give you an answer that'll help. So the question is, it doesn't work, and it's good for everybody to know that. It's good for you all to understand there's a difference between codependency and narcissism. Like you can't really, you can pretty much say, oh, I think codependency is this, and as long as it relates to a native, because of the historical roots, it's an American term, popularized in America in the 80s. There was three books written by three American women that became huge, booming bestsellers around codependency. And it was largely about women who stayed in abusive relationships with men. Before that, in the 70s in America, it was a term from Alcoholics Anonymous, and it meant largely the enabler of the alcoholic. Now, the way I use it, the way some people use it, is the person who sticks around with the narcissist and endures the abuse, a person who has a hyper agreeable fawn response in interactions, especially in the face of confrontation. So, how is the codependent narcissistic? At the same time, clinically, they're not. How could they be narcissistic out there in the world? Well, in my view, and in the view of other people, by some of the definitions of codependency, narcissism is a form of codependency because the narcissist does not stand alone. They are codependent on the adulation of an audience of completely interchangeable and unimportant people, but still an audience of human beings. They're codependent on that in order to live. So they have codependency. Now, don't forget, by the way, footnote that will tickle you. If you look at Pete Walker's model of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, narcissism is primary fight, secondary fawn. So that's a fight fawn responder. Fawn. Huh. So this is how the narcissist deals with threat and with confrontation, by switching from bullying and aggression and threats to charm and placation and compromise. I have screenshots of text arguments I have had with two narcissists in the last year where they switch text by text. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Bully, fawn, bully, fawn, bully, fawn. It's a machine. It's a machine. It's artificial intelligence. It has two ways of operating in the world, and that's it. And they're both based in primary survival responses. So that's interesting, right? I guess your question was more like, how could somebody who we define as codependent be narcissistic? Anybody can be narcissistic for a period of time or in certain contexts. We all have latent narcissism, and we all have the capacity to be abusive. So yeah, it's entirely possible. It's entirely possible. It's something one has to look out for. You could be you could be in your narcissistic defense. And in your narcissistic defense, if you're not doing your emotional regulation work, if you're not doing your emotional literacy work, you could become quite nasty. Who knows? Dr. Abdul Saad, I always say his name wrong, from Australia, the psychotherapist. He's done a series of videos. Dr. Abdul Saad has done a series of videos on the resentful codependent. It's quite common for codependents to get nasty. Well, why wouldn't they? If they've been giving and giving and giving, and all that resentment builds up, eventually aggression is going to be the result, right? So there's another answer for you. And our last question, which is a long one. Are we ready? Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Everybody chant with me. Deep breath. We allow spaciousness between our thoughts and inside of the somatic space. It's time to feel safe inside of your own body. I'll start doing ASMR videos soon. Let's all learn to feel safe inside of our bodies. You really must learn to do that. I'm not joking. I, the questioner says, have been raised by a narcissistic man. It has rubbed off on us plenty, but after his passing, I got less angry and more comfortable with myself. My family, not so much. It feels like some of them have gotten angrier and are taking it out on anyone unfortunate to get in their sight. After years of dealing with this, I have unresolved anger, and it's hard for me to let go of. No matter how much I punch a bag or do the biggest deadlift I can, my anger stays. Oh, my dear fellow, punching bags and lifting weights does not alchemy of the anger make. I've been going to therapy and I still have a lot to say to my family, but I know they won't listen. So my question is, what can I do to help resolve some of these unresolved feelings that I still harbor? And will I become twisted like they are if I can't let go of it? My friend, you have a pronounced fight response, and we need to be careful when we fall back to our primary trauma responses. They usually don't lead us anywhere good. So you could fight, fawn, flight, or freeze. And we all do all of them, but we prioritize some of them. You probably are a fight responder. So you are complaining about your anger, but you also use your anger, and it's become part of how you deal with life, and part of how you deal with threat, and part of how you deal with anxiety, and part of how you deal with uncertainty. So your question is, you want to resolve the unresolved anger. Are you willing to let go of the thing that fuels the way you live your life? What are you going to replace it with? I would suggest that you find new ways of operating in the world and of getting what you want, of getting your needs met first, before you go to therapy and try and let go of anger. Because if you do that, if you don't do that, if you don't find new ways of operating in the world, your unconscious won't let you let go of the anger. It will say, no, we need this. This is how we live. This is how we stay healthy. This is how we stay strong. This is how I know who I am. So that would be my advice to you. I'll take a couple of quick fire questions in the live chat. Oh, I have a Patreon now. It is I don't know, Patreon Backmar Gammon or something. Patreon Richard Grannon. It is a 5,000 Ugandan. It's $5 United States dollars a month, and I'll be doing an exclusive live Q&A once a week for Patreon subscribers. So I will put, after this has ended, a link in the more information bar, and I'll pin a comment. Please join me there, and I will do the first live with my Patreon subscribers on this Wednesday at the same time as I'm doing this now. So you say, what time? This time. I'm in a different time zone to you. It's 11 o'clock at night for me. What time? 11 for me, and whatever it is for you, where you are. We're in different places. How do you overcome the trauma bond? Was asked. I have a good course for that. It's called How to Break the Trauma Bond. It's available from SpartanLifeCoach.com. A course that I'm probably the course I'm most proud of. It actually has a completely original concept in it. Most of my courses use like mainstream psychology, but just reformatted or with a different syntax and a different emphasis, and then some neurolinguistic programming and some hypnosis. That's it. But the Break the Trauma Bond is actually a genuinely, as far as I'm aware, it's a completely original concept. And not only is it original, it works. Please write in the comments if you did the Break the Trauma Bond course and it worked for you. I could tell you verbally how it goes here. It's not an expensive course. Just get it, work it for a month. If you don't like it, just get a refund. That would be the easiest way of getting it done. It is a strong course. Seriously, how is Dubai? It's very nice. Thank you. Is there any real benefit to seeking a diagnosis for my 16-year-old son? I can't talk to that kind of thing. I'm not a clinician. I don't diagnose people. I can't diagnose people. And I wouldn't presume to give advice in this format on such a delicate issue as people's children. So you need to speak to qualified professionals, and I'm not one of them. I'm a jolly good public speaker on the subject, but that's as far as I can go. Just purchased the course. I'm really looking forward to the end results. Great stuff. Yeah, you're gonna like it. It's a strong course. It's shot like in 5 or 6 years ago. The visuals are not as good as now, but the sound is fine and the exercises are great, and it's a good course. he is nice to my face, but behind my back, bad mouthing and issuing divorce proceeding. Why do they do this, and what side to believe? Um, what to coerce and manipulate your behavior and people's perception of you is why they would do this. To coerce and manipulate your behavior and people's perception of you. So he's nice to you to get him to do what he wants you to do, but behind your back, he is being mean about you because he needs people to not like you so that he can isolate you and have more power over you. Question. Oh, do you offer trust building workbooks? If no, are there any you recommend? No, I don't. I wouldn't really know what to do. Uh, I mean, if we are going to do, let's say we, like me and the people that I've hired to help me, we are going to start doing frequent courses now. We're going to do online seminars, the business seminars coming up a week on Sunday. We've got the Patreon going, so we can go deeper into these subjects as well. I mean, if people want a course on trust building, I can do it. Please write in the comments if you do. But I'd have to give it, I'd have to give it some thought, like for a specific process. I mean, I'd really, I need to know the context because if we're talking about narcissistic personality disorder abuse, you really have to have done the Unplug from the Matrix course first before we get into building trust as such indirectly. Otherwise, your brain is still colonized. It's not going to work. Okay, folks. So, do you consider yourself healed now, Richard? Um, I consider myself. I don't tend to use the word healed. I say like I feel better. Um, I definitely feel a lot stronger. I feel saner. I was actually thinking before I came on, I am one of those annoying, boring people who lives like a genuinely healthy life. I go to the gym, I follow a diet, I don't drink alcohol anymore, I stay hydrated. I should be a social media influencer and just be really annoying everybody with how clean and, healthy my life is. But yeah, no, I feel good. I feel good and definitely better than where I was at. Healed? I guess so. I guess so. I found his channel in 2019. He's changed a lot since then. Well, that was pre the old scenario, and I think everybody went through a bit of a crucible in those years, didn't we? Like I felt like I grew. I matured about 15 years inside of two or 3 years, and I know. I was trying to explain to a friend of mine 2 nights ago. She couldn't believe it. I was like, no, no, I'm much, much stronger than I was in 2019. She was like, no, you seem the same. I'm like, I am not the same. I'm definitely not the same. Okay, folks. I hope that was useful. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. If you're interested in joining my Patreon and getting the live exclusive Q&As every week so we can delve deeper into subjects as we've just done now. Please join me there. And that's it. So behave yourselves. Thank you all for joining me. As I say, thank you for your time, for your attention. Do what you know to be right, and I will speak to you soon.